today, and I hope that with my experience of running TEDx since 2018, every consecutive year, it will be of use to the audience here, because not only is it about aspiring to be a TEDx speaker, but also maybe even taking up the challenge using all of your Toastmaster skills of running a TEDx. And really, I suppose the best thing is start with how did I start to be an organizer? I think one of the things, just as a bit of background, sorry, I am founder of Much More Than Words, End of Life Ireland, Conversation Matters, Celebrating Life. They are all different parts of what I do. So in each of my roles in those different entities, what I do is use my story weaving skills. So you might say that really I found my niche in TED Talks. And that's the key thing for me, for all of you to realize today. TED is different in that Toastmasters is all, and I've been through Toastmasters as well. The skills that you learn in Toastmasters equip you well with the techniques, with the what, the why, the where, the how, and everything else. You can go all the way through Toastmasters and still not connect. And I think that's a really important thing to realize. TED Talks, they're called talks for a reason, because they are like a conversation. And that's the first thing I really, really would like everyone to realize. But how did my journey begin? Sorry, I'm getting a bit hot here. I'm in County Kilkenny, in somebody else's house, perched on a stool, stack of books like this to have my screen up. Toastmasters, we improvise, we can turn on a sixpence. TED Talks, it's goodness. I did mine by mistake, if you like, or accidentally in 2017. It was a last minute call out. I was somehow picked. Putting it very bluntly, if I can use a bit of bad language here, I was going through a shit time in my life. I have no memory of doing that talk. I was very fortunate. I produced something that isn't that bad, but it taught me a lot about how to do it better. And I think that's the secret of being, if you like, whether you call it a Toastmaster, but a speaker in whatever environment. Always, how can we do things better? How can we do things differently? So that was in 2017, still in a big fog, let's say. I woke up one morning in my seaside town of Dunleary in the south of Ireland, got onto the computer, tap, 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 as you do, applied for a license to have TED Talks in Dunleary. I didn't have a clue how I was going to do it, how I would get funding, but I just knew we had to have it. That is not the way to do it. That is definitely not the way to do it. What inspired me to do it? I just really felt that people had not only stories, because I think the more we see the confessional box on TED Talks, it's really not what TED Talks is about. TED Talks really, for me, is about what value you can give other people through the lessons that maybe your experience can bring. It's not about promoting your business. No TED speaker gets paid. What I would advise is get your team around you and all of the basic skills. I am curator. I'm also the speaker coach. I'm the key organizer, but I also have organizers on the team with me. You need digital skills. So, and do, Vicky, jump in if I'm going off at a tangent, because it's highly possible. But you really do need to get your team around you. Every event will have a theme. Every event will have a theme. And as you'll see from the 3 guest speakers that we have here today, they have spoken to that theme, which is generally abstract. You need to create a theme that is wide enough to give scope to be interpreted in many different ways. So whilst for a speaker, your audience is, on the one hand, on the night, the audience in front of you. Your ultimate audience, your true audience, is way beyond And I'm sorry if you can hear a buzzer. That was my diabetic sensor going off, telling me I'm going a bit crazy here.
And you have about 4 minutes, Janie, so you're doing great.
Okay, I just want to get as much valuable information across to you as possible. Uh, as I say, have run, this is my 5th consecutive year, but I have 2 parts to TEDx Dunleary. We're quite unique in that respect. We have young speakers in one session or one separate license, and adult speakers in another. And if anyone has an alternative word for adults, please let me know, because it's a tricky one. So essentially, this will be the 5th year with the equivalent of 10 events. It's a mighty undertaking, and there can be nothing more thrilling for a speaker than appearing before an audience. TED offer a variety of licenses. So for aspiring organizers, what you have to do before you can run any other event is to have run 2 consecutive years of a license, the standard license. That gives you the capacity of up to 100 paid seats. So the beauty about it is that you have a small audience. I say small, but I think Pat, you'll say, and we'll come on to you later. Pat was one of my speakers, Pat Caslin. There is nothing like stepping out onto that red dot. However you get there, it's a very, very different experience. There is nothing like it. And it's one of those things where you know the audience is there, but you won't be able to see them. The lighting comes down on you, the lighting screens absolutely everything. And what you have to do is you have to imagine you're having a conversation. It's a little bit like a one-sided conversation. And I think that's probably, again, another key thing for people to remember. It's not a performance. It's not a presentation. It's a very intimate conversation, because whoever is listening at the other end, which eventually they are, quite possibly one person on their phone, it's going to be a one-sided conversation with them. So it's using all of the techniques that we learn in Toastmasters to the very best ability, but in a very, very different way. And the question I have for everybody is, why do you want to give a TEDx? Why? What is it for you? Is it a calling card? Or is there something more? Because TEDx, and I keep saying to me, is all about integrity. So I see a red light up there, Victoria. Thank you for that. It's always very welcome. Guide me as to where you would like me to go next.
Why don't you open the panel and do it however you'd like, Janie.
Okay. As I say, I am really pleased to be able to invite the 3 speakers on screen to give their experience. We have Marjorie, and I just want to give you a brief introduction to her there. Marjorie is a health educator from Indianapolis. She's an immigrant from Venezuela. Her passion is helping other immigrants to start a new life. And her TED Talk was called Natural Helpers. That was in 2017. Pat Caslin spoke at the first TEDx that I organised in Dunleary. The theme of that particular TEDx was perceptions and perspectives, and his talk was chronically ill, very healthy. Victoria Trabosh is a professional speaker and author. Her TED Talk was in 2018. It was called Resurgence, and that was in Fort Wayne. And I must have a conversation later with you, Victoria, about that, because I think one of my speakers in that first year is also from Fort Wayne. So I turn to my panel. I have my experience as a TEDx speaker, but the key thing is for everyone else on this call today to, if you like, learn from the experience of others. And I'm particularly interested at the end of all of this as well to, a few years on now, see what your individual reflections are because we all say, yes, we would have done it differently. I know I would have. So perhaps we can turn to the speakers themselves, and maybe Pat, ask you first of all, why did you want to be a TEDx speaker?
I got encouraged to do it. I had done a talk in June 2018 for a group of doctors on different things, on health and illness, on doctor-patient relationships, and on breaking bad news. And I thought these were good topics, and it happened to be an 18-minute talk in front of about 50, 60 doctors. And one of them wrote to me afterwards and said, I really enjoyed that. You should do a TEDx talk or do a TED talk. And I thought, hey, there's an idea. I wasn't a Toastmaster at that stage. So I went looking for, how do I do a TED talk? And I saw the TEDx Dunleary was coming up, and I said, well, wouldn't that be handy, because I only live a couple of miles from Dunleary. And I got in touch with Janie. I heard that she was a Toastmaster. I got in touch with her and said, how do I get on the panel to do a talk? And she had an application process. I applied, did my 1-minute video, and got selected and was delighted to be. But I wanted to do it because I wanted to see, could I do it? I wanted to see, could I step up on the stage and do something that was worthwhile? And it was challenging to do, and that was before I became a Toastmaster. So, but I do wish that I had been a Toastmaster for 3 or 4 years before I did it, because I think I would have done a much better talk.
And Vicky, perhaps I can turn to you and ask you the same question.
Sure. I always wanted to give a TED talk, not a TEDx. And maybe Janie, you can talk about the difference of those. And yet I knew that to get up to the TED stage is a different deal. I had applied I Googled alerted TEDx talk applications, because I did not talk to an organizer like Pat asked you. And I applied to one in England and was turned down. And a no just means I tried, not no to my speech. And then there was one in Fort Wayne, Indiana, where I actually grew up. I live in Portland, Oregon. I did not want to give a TEDx talk in Fort Wayne, Indiana, because I'd been bullied as a child. I wanted to talk about 3 things. My speech, the theme was resurgence. My speech was called Your Voice, Your Choice. And I wanted to talk about being bullied as a child, how my mother's voice helped me, about the work I do in Rwanda and how I have a voice for others. And then when I had oral cancer and the doctor wanted to cut off my mouth, and I had to listen to my own voice and say no. I applied to this Fort Wayne, Indiana speech, and I got accepted. And here's what I know. As much as I didn't want to go back to Fort Wayne and give this speech where all the bullying started when I was a young teen, it was the perfect place. And just as we have 72 people on the line today, we had 129 register, the right people are always in the room, and I was in the right room. That speech was something that allowed me, when I was working with my coach, it's nerve-wracking to give an 18-minute speech, conversation one way. You're exactly right, Janie. Lights are down, you can't see anyone. It was a new TEDx, so 100 people sold out, which isn't a big crowd if you're a speaker, but it's an important crowd. And the one thing, I'm just going to add it right now, because the one thing my coach said to me when I said, what if I forget my speech? And he said, Vicky, is this speech coming from you or through you? The minute he said that, I realized I know my stories, I know my message, let it come through me, not from me. It changed everything. Janie. You're on mute.
Apologies. I just want to pick up on a couple of key things that you put there that will be of use to the audience. Each TEDx has a very different way of either selecting speakers, doing a call out. I do a mix. I do a certain amount of invitation. I'm always looking for people. So I do a mix. I do a call out to make sure that there could be something really, really different out there, and also people who I think have a real story to tell. Each TEDx has their own selection criteria against that. The reason why many of us use a 1-minute video is, one, we know that then you can talk to camera, two, that you can talk to time, and also just to get an idea, a sense of the person. And again, one of the questions you asked me, and we'll come back to later, is about doing virtual events. Different TEDx's, some of them offer coaching support, which is, I do in TEDx Dunleary. I actually do the coaching myself at the moment, have done since the start. That, for me, comes out of my own budget of sponsorship. Some people will hire their own speaker coach, or use the one that is there and pay them additionally to give them extra coaching. I would, yes, every speaker should have 3 signature stories, I believe, that you can tell throughout your life in many different ways. But I would say to anybody, don't have your talk, the talk that you're dying to give, and fling it in to every TEDx. What I did last year was there were half of my speakers who really weren't sure or convinced that the story they had was the story they wanted to tell. And in the collaborative coaching process that I put people through, which has improved year on year as I've learned how to do it better, the right story comes out, the right words tumble out on the night. Do not use a script, do not make it prescriptive, do not go for memory. If you go blank, it's a disaster. Speak from your heart. You'll have your links. You know your story. Nobody will ever, ever, ever know what you've left out. Marjorie, get ready to unmute because I would like you to come on.
I'm ready. Why did I want to become a TEDx speaker? I never knew what TEDx was. And when I was invited, I was this close to decline the invitation. Why I wanted to decline the invitation? Because I had done this presentation so many times for the organization that I said, I'm going to give the opportunity to another person. They can do it. And I was talking to my husband and I said, I'm thinking that I'm not going to do it. And he said, do you know what is a TEDx? And I said, no, I don't know. And he explained to me what a TEDx is. Oh my gosh. Immediately I said, I take that challenge. Why? Because I need to prove to myself that I can do things and I can excel. I can fail, but I can always get up and keep going. And I will learn from that. And that's why I wanted, after learning what a TEDx was, I wanted to do it. Everybody can do it, but you have to desire to do it. You have to see yourself on that red dot and speak from your heart. And you mentioned, Jenny, if you get blank, you are going to be in trouble. But speak from your heart. Learn your lines, but don't learn word by word. Just do it, and you are going to do it well.
The other thing, Vicky, that I didn't answer is you said that you wanted to do a TED talk, and somebody picked me up in my very early days of familiarizing myself, way before giving a TED talk, way before organizing, and I said, "Oh, TED talk, TEDx, their baby, it's the baby version," and somebody quite rightly pulled me aside and said, "Never ever say that. A TED or TEDx talk has equal value. One is not less worthy than the other." And TED itself has been evolving. TED was always the big conference. And yes, people of note, if you like, were invited to speak. And I say people of note, it could be a designer who's created something, but not known to the rest of the world. TED chooses their main stage speakers for a variety of different reasons. The X simply means a locally organized event. They're independent, and that's the only difference there. TED
I think it's important if you've done a TEDx, you cannot say you're a TED speaker. People who know will say, and I was talking to a world famous speaker, and I said, I'd done a TEDx, and he looked at me and he said, glad you didn't say TED. I said, I know the difference. The other thing I'd like to add to what Marjorie said about memorizing and forgetting, 2 speakers in our group. One woman, I didn't get to Fort Wayne until the day before I was going to speak. So I got my coaching before I left and I met my coach, but there were 2 speakers. One woman was speaking, had never given a speech. She memorized the entire speech word for word, 18 minutes time 120 words, do the math. And I said, how did you do that? She said, I have repeated this speech 200 times to my parents on the phone. I said, okay, good luck. Then there's a guy, a wonderful young man, who was the last speaker, who was really sort of trying to entertain us and went dead blank. And he stood there in that, it wasn't the pause, the pregnant pause. He absolutely forgot his speech. What I loved about him was he stood there, he didn't panic, he found it and started again, but talk about rhythm. When our TEDx was over, I had family there who lived in the area, and I asked someone in my family about the woman. I didn't say anything about what she had done. And I said to someone, what did you think about so-and-so's speech? And he said to me, felt like it was rehearsed. You cannot memorize these speeches. They must come through you, not from you.
Yeah, very, very much so. And it's one of those things, the videographers, and this is where somebody said to me once, do you ever intend to live stream? And the answer for TEDx Dunleary, whilst I am curator, is no. There is a magic in the theatre. There's something very special. It's an honor to speak. It's an honor for the audience to be there. And there's such support for the speakers. And going back to live streaming, if I were to live stream, and there have been, particularly with the younger speakers, there are talks about suicide, all sorts of things. That it puts somebody in the spotlight of vulnerability. And I don't think it's an added pressure. Fine if you're going through Toastmasters and all the competitions, that's the expectation, that's part of it. And the same with PSA and many other professional speaking clubs. There's something very intimate, very protective. There's a great integrity with TEDx. I have known of different TEDx's that have been set up purely so that the organizer can invite different people to speak. And I just think that loses the integrity of what the TED brand stands for, and the role that every TEDx speaker and every organizer has responsibility to carry. Do you have to be a good speaker? No. That's what a good collaborative coaching process will do for you. That's what a good speaker coach will help you through, particularly within the TED environment. Do you have to be the best speaker ever? No, it's not a performance. It's really about the core message, and it's what we all say for any of us who do coach professionally. What do you want people to be feeling afterwards? We all know the old thing, people won't remember what you say, it's how you make them feel. That's what you want. What you want is somebody afterwards to say, yeah, I remember that guy. That guy, he had MS in Dublin, and he really made me appreciate what it's like, how he addresses things. So they get on Google. They may not even remember Pat Caslin's name, but they will get on there because they've taken away the core message of his talk. And it's a bit like if I bumped into you, Vicky, or anybody, and it's a bit like the elevator pitch. And I don't know you, and I say, oh, you know, I haven't got time to have coffee, but listen, I heard you gave a great TEDx. What was it about? Don't tell me the title. Don't tell me the essence of it. Tell me what it does. It's a little bit like a product. What it did was help my TEDx hawk talk helps people come through grief, help them live again. And I'd be curious, well, how did you do that? I must come back to you. Let's have a cup of coffee. So it's a very different process. The one question people may be asking, why did I not get selected? I've got a great idea. And, you know, the old ego can come in. Well, it's important to remember for a TEDx organizer, you're putting on an event. You are not the only speaker. The event itself and TED and TEDx are big on the audience experience. They research after the show. They will email all the attendees and ask them on a scale of 1 to 10 what they think. Many of you will have been there, you'll have received that kind of email. But it's all about the audience experience. So for me as a curator, when I've been thinking about the theme, I'm thinking about each of the speakers, the content of their talk, how it's going to hang together. So you may not be selected for a variety of different reasons. It could be somebody's pitching and it's clear that what they're really wanting to do is to directly, indirectly promote their business. Be aware, a good TEDx organizer, even on the night, has the authority to stop and pull you off stage if you start deviating from the accepted rules. Most TEDx organizers wouldn't do that.
Janie, we've got about 12 minutes left of the panel, so if you could keep going and then we'll open for Q&A.
Okay, what I would like very much is the key question that I asked earlier. Having given your TED Talks, and for the 3 speakers here from 2017 and 2 were in 2018, it's been a few years now. What was the biggest reflection, having done it, having been through the process? Maybe, Vicky, you start on that.
Well, I've done a lot in my career. I've been working for over 42 years. And if you think there's one thing that's going to take you over the top, I would disagree. I've spoken at the United Nations, I've written a book, I've done all kinds of things. So I thought the TEDx, that's going to do it. Here's what I learned. 1, I gave the best speech of my life that day. Would I do it differently today? It would be a different speech. But that day, I did the best I could do. And for that, I am thankful. The other thing I learned greatly which was a great lesson. I love what you said, Janie. People who resonated with my message love the idea of how will I use my voice in the world. But there is no one thing. It did not take me, quote, over some top. So I realized in that moment, I realized this a couple of years ago, everything we do takes us to the next area in our life. There is that golden thread. Viktor Frankl refers to it. There's nothing in the past that doesn't affect me today, and this will affect me next. Even the fact that I get to stand on this stage as a TEDx presenter and give you advice. So that's what I learned. 1, I gave the best speech I could that day. And 2, it's not the end all. It's just another step in the greatness that you want to bring to the world.
Yeah. Marjorie.
Well, TEDx was and is a huge platform. And for me, it was a great, great addendum to my life experiences. I learned that I can do whatever I set my mind on. I remember that I learned how to swim at 43 years of age because my doctor told me you need to do therapy swimming. I said, I don't know how to swim. And he said, I didn't ask you if you knew how to swim. You have to swim. And I started doing it. That was one of the moments in my life that I said, I can do many things if I decide to do it. I flew over the ocean in a ultralighter, 2 people only. I did it. I said, I'm going to do it. I want to see the ocean from above. I was scared, but I did it. TEDx was another moment for me. Scared to death. What is going to happen if I don't do it correctly? And you know what? My presentation was running and it had a glitch. And I heard the people on the audience concerned about me. And I said, no, don't worry. I know what I'm talking about. I can continue without anything. And I kept going. It's believing in yourself. You can do it. Try, fail, and do it, but you can do it. And my advice to people, pay attention, listen to your coach, practice, and learn just few things. It's your story. Nobody else knows that. And speak from your heart.
And Pat, your reflections now, a few years on.
I went on stage at TEDx Dunleary in 2018 with some flashcards in my lap that I had been writing up to about 3 or 4 minutes before I went on. And they were mainly concerned with the first half of the talk because the second half of the talk I'd given a few times and probably was quite fluent. Since I've done the TEDx talk, I've given 110 speeches in different Toastmasters clubs around the world in the last 3.5 years. I only joined Toastmasters afterwards. And I've discovered that there is so much more that I could have put into that talk. And there was a lot in it, but there's so much more that I could have put into it that could have been of enormous value to people. And this is from reflecting on some of the original thinking that I had to do over that summer of 2018, from the time I applied to the time that I made the 1-minute video to the time that I had worked out what was my key theme, why would this benefit people, or what was the message that I wanted to deliver. And since then, that started me on thinking around putting some sort of structure or organizing the thoughts I had in my mind so that I could convey them to people, the thoughts around the fact that you control your own mind, the thoughts that you can have a chronic illness, as I do, and be very healthy, because health is a state of mind. And I wanted to say those things, but I've said them in so many ways with so many different ideas, or and I still want to say them. But if I did another one, I think it would probably be much more powerful. I think it would be more powerful. But I think the major thing in giving a talk is it's not a show, as you said, Janie. It is definitely not a show. It's you out there speaking the truth that you know, the truth that you believe that other people can benefit from hearing in a way that will relate to them. So it's about speaking your truth. And it's not a showcase. It's somewhere that will benefit others rather than benefit yourself. And if you're doing it to benefit yourself, you're doing it for the wrong reason. You should do it to benefit others, to give them something that will benefit them. That's the whole idea of TED.
I mean, I've already said, thank you for that, Pat. Less is more. And the key question that I say to all of my speakers is, the question you need to ask yourself is, what can I say in the time that I've got that is of the most value? It's not about you. It's not about how much you know. It's the abridged version that you can then go on and talk for an hour when invited.
Speaking of time, Janie, we have 4
Yes,
minutes
please.
of this, 4 more minutes for this part, and then we'll go to Q&A.
Okay. Goodness. I'm wondering, I mean, some people sort of say, I'd love to do another TED Talk. And I noticed one of the questions there is somebody was saying, would you do another one, Pat? And again, it depends on each organizer, how they're set up, what their principles are. We have I suppose, a vision of inclusion, in, and what we try to do is never have somebody who has already given a TEDx. To be frank, I think it's a bit greedy. I think people have their chances, give somebody else a chance. It fits in with the ethos of TED. I get approached all the time, bribed almost. No, give it to first timers. Unless there's a very special reason. No. How much preparation time? Do you use notes? I think we've covered all of these things. The ideal time, I think, for any talk, I always give my speakers 8 minutes, because I know some of them, depending on as we go through the collaborative coaching process, some will come in shorter, some will come in longer, some merit longer. But you've also got to remember that people's attention span now is even less. And I think that's the key thing. And you will always take a little bit longer unless you've rehearsed it word for word, line by line. And in doing so, lose maybe a little of the authenticity of your talk. If you'd like to go over to direct questions, Vicky, I think this is probably a good point, unless somebody else wanted to ask me a very direct question.
I would say let's go to Q&A. It's 9:40. We're 2 minutes ahead, which is great. Well, let's use that for the audience questions. And please raise your virtual hand, and we'll be able to see it easier with 74 people on the line. It's very hard to look through. So if you have a question for anyone on the panel or for the panel in general, please raise your virtual hand, which is down under your reactions. You'll see a little hand, and we will call on you. Really? No questions. We do have one. Oh, Lavinia Stewart. And Brad, if you could spotlight her during they have the question. Manisha, please raise your hand and we will see you up in the screen. So, Lavinia.
Yes. Janie, you said 8 minutes because people's attention span is shorter, but earlier you said the TEDx is 18 minutes. Is this TEDx 18 or 8 minutes?
No, the TEDx, when they started, I don't think I said that at the beginning. TED Talks originally were, I think they started around 22, then they went to 18. I always give 8 minutes as a guide. One, because I know most people who do speak in whether it's Toastmaster clubs or other, know what, if you like, between 5 and 7 will take. 8 gives you a good amount of time to get a good talk in.
Okay.
8 minutes for me is a good amount of time. It's not that so much that people's attention span is short. Yes, we we're all in a rush now, but it's to maximize the opportunity for somebody to play your talk. Most people now, they're either on the train, they're maybe going to switch the kettle on to make a cup of tea, they're in between things. If your talk is much longer, unless it's very specific, maybe it's on Asperger's, maybe it's on death and dying, and it's very specific, people will run out of steam. And unless you are a really good speaker, to keep people interested for that amount of time is rare.
Okay, I understand.
Can I add to that too, Lavinia? One thing I've know TEDx speakers and TED speakers as well. And you cannot use a lot of backgrounds. Death by PowerPoint is no joke. And the only one I ever saw successfully use backgrounds was an artist who was showing her photography, which was so powerful. But you really have to let it come through you because you don't have any prompts. You're not using notes. You're not like Pat had notes on his lap. I remember watching him. I watched a guy in Fort Wayne, Indiana, or Portland, Oregon, when they did the first TEDx, which is now the largest TEDx in the country. 2,000-3,000 people go. He actually was so nervous. He had notes that he was shaking. And then he showed a full-blown picture of himself naked because it was all about his prostate cancer. And that was a powerful photo, I have to tell you. But he was a very edgy guy, but rarely do you get to do anything. And in 8 minutes, you can say a lot, as we all know. And again, as Janie said, if it's a longer speech, it may take more time because you don't want to rush the idea, but you don't want to beat it to death either.
You need to be very proficient with your slides and also have slides that are really just one big image, one line of text. And I really wouldn't bother because anything that's relevant can, if it's needed, be added in at the editing stage. The other thing that we didn't mention anywhere, which I think is quite important, is bear in mind that you are a speaking person, generally speaking to a hearing audience. I've had a deaf speaker who I coached and trained, and we had interpreters at the event. But just be aware as well that when you're using graphics, if you're adding them in at the editing stage, it's got to fit in. You know, there are too many things, and they are called talks for a reason.
Right. Thank you.
It's not about fancy graphics.
Right. Kenya, you have a question.
Thank you, Victoria, for taking my question. My question is, I have twofold questions. And first, I just want to thank all of you for your presence and for just depositing these seeds inside of us. Victoria, you said a strong statement. I've heard this a couple of times this week. The right people are always in the room. And so I'm always amazed by what you're exposed to. You can't get unexposed, right? Because there's a blessing within it. So 2 questions. One, I'm not clear on the TEDx process. I heard you say that it's local. Is there a website that you just go to? Do you identify your local TEDx organizer? Just the clarity with that. Or could a person, because I think I heard you, Victoria, say you went to a place that you did not want to, or Marjorie, one of you went somewhere.
It was me. I found out that TED Talk, that TEDx, I had Google, if you're interested in doing a TEDx, one of the things you can do is Google Alert. If you don't know how to use Google Alert, no time to teach you right now, but Google Alert, TEDx applications. You will see them come through. You will see the theme. You can apply. Lots of clubs, lots of local TEDx want local speakers. I think one of the reasons I got to Fort Wayne, Indiana was because and I did that in my 1-minute videotape. I said, I am from Fort Wayne, Indiana, and the bullying happened there. I believe that's probably what got me into that because everybody else was local.
Okay, got it. So that was just designed order for you. Your steps were ordered there.
Exactly.
Okay,
but I can't answer. We want Janie to answer your question about the TEDx briefly because we're going to do this for about 8 more minutes. So Janie, can you answer her question about?
And then Victoria, really quick, have any of the speakers ever desired to be a TED speaker? It looks like that's like the next space.
Okay, to take your questions, to apply for a TEDx license, you have to live in the town that you are applying to for the license. So that's the first thing. There is an encouragement to, particularly if you're getting sponsorship from your local enterprise board or something like that, to, if you like, have speakers from your area.
Okay.
It's like all these things. Does it always happen? No. I've often included international speakers and speakers since COVID. That was something else we were going to answer earlier. I think because of COVID, that has changed everything, including the way TED works. So we're now, as we've seen on with Toastmasters, doing hybrid meetings. A lot of TEDx organisers try to be local or have some connection with the area. Going back to COVID, I managed to film all of my talks during COVID so that I could do a virtual event with pre-recorded talks, but it's not the same. It's just not the same.
Absolutely. It's nothing about being in the presence. Got it. Thank you, Jane.
And yes, I'd love to, I would never say no if I had the opportunity for a TED opportunity.
I would also say yes if my message was something I needed to deliver, that I felt it had to come through me. I don't, Marjorie, can you say a quick yes or no for a TED Talk? Would you do a TED Talk?
I would do it.
Pat?
I would do it.
Marjorie says
Yeah,
yes.
yes, I would. You know, the more speaking I do, the more people I listen to. Yes, I would. Yeah.
Absolutely. Your
I
story.
learned with my speech that I reach a lot of people, and people got the message, and they were asking me afterwards. I went to a health fair, and somebody approached me and said, "You were speaking at this TEDx."
Awesome.
It was amazing. And
Okay,
I said, "Oh, wow."
Marjorie, I'm gonna keep moving. We have 5 more minutes for questions. We've got 4 or 5 hands up. Dave Ryan, you're up.
My questions maybe for Pat, but for everyone. Just on the application process, you mentioned the 1-minute video. Any thoughts on what people should include in the application process and what to include in that 1 minute?
The question that I was answering in the 1-minute video, David, was what is the main purpose of your talk, or what's the main benefit of your talk, and why should people listen to it? You know, so in that 1 minute, I had to condense my sense of what this talk was going to be into something very, very, very succinct that was going to be persuasive. And I have to tell you that I gave that talk 50 times or 60 times to get that 1 minute right. But, you know, it worked. Thank you.
I'd like to ask Manisha. Manisha, you had your hand up.
Sorry, my question was the same as Lavanya's about the 8 minutes. So that has been answered. Thank you.
You're welcome. Rosalind, your hand is up. Rosalind Henderson.
You're on mute, Rosalind.
Can anyone
Hello. Hi.
Rosalind, your question,
Okay.
please.
Okay, great. Is there any topic that is taboo on a TEDx or TED?
Religion, essentially, goodness, it's not a campaigning platform. What I would encourage anybody to do is if you go onto the TED website, you'll find everything about TED there. And it breaks it down into organizers, speakers, speaker topics, categories. But essentially, it's a platform for respectful conversations.
Medical advices to them.
Yeah, I had a friend, a distant friend in LA who was putting together a TED Talk, and it was on spiritual issues, not a religion, but spiritual. TEDx pulled her license and she was furious, but you can't bring a religious platform to TED. It's not about religion. So.
Or promote your business.
Correct. Priya, is it Priya? Is that how you say it? Go ahead, Priya.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Victoria. Thank you to the panel. I wanted to ask how many people are typically there in the room when the TEDx session happens? And my second question is how many such 8-minute speakers speak one after the other?
Okay, it depends on the license that the organizer has applied for. So as I said, the first license that you can apply for really is the standard license, and there are different licenses within the standard license. So it's 100 people, and you have to run an event for 2 years before you can apply for another one. The type of license will vary. So schools and colleges and libraries have a different category. There's a business license, and all of these affect the, if you like, the delivery and where those talks may be shown.
Thank you.
Just to add to that, I was at another TEDx conference recently, and there were 17 speakers over the course of the day, which was very long, but we went to all of it. But what we found was that there were too many giving the same type, or on the same theme. So getting a balance of the speakers, a good balance of the speakers, particularly from an audience perspective, and something that Janie said earlier, is really important for organizers.
That's why an esoteric word like resurgence, I actually read it as resilience. And I was thinking I did talk about resilience, but then I realized, well, there is resurgence. So this is good. Christina, you are our last and final question. My apologies, but we will end on time at 10. So go ahead, Christina.
I'd like to first thank the panel for sharing their wisdom and experiences. My question is, which pathway level in Toastmasters would set one up to be TED ready? Would you recommend I wait until I become a DTM?
If you're comfortable speaking now, Christina, don't let any pathway get in your way. Just speak plenty. Know your truth that you want to say, and know why people will benefit from it and why they should listen to you. And when you get to that point, apply to be a TEDx speaker. That's all you need to do. Let's take a question from Geeta if we can. And finally, Vicky. Yeah, Geeta.
Okay, before we go to Geeta, I just want to say one more thing, Christina, is that the failure to launch is something I talk to my clients about. You want to make sure you're ready to get ready. What Pat just said is really good. Pat hadn't even done Toastmasters. Use Toastmasters, but don't use it as an excuse. Okay, Geeta, you get, no, we can't, Pat. We've got to close at 10. I'm sorry. And I just want to close with some remarks. But I do want to say to everyone, thank you, especially to our panel. Janie, thank you for your wisdom that you bring as the organizer. Marjorie and Pat, your words are full of wisdom. We will take this recording, put it on our link. You will get it so you can watch it again. I'm also going to include in that email that you'll all get a link to all of our TEDx talks. You can watch those, and our emails. Because there are unanswered questions, if there's someone you want to specifically ask a question to, we're not cutting it off to stop, but we said an hour, we mean an hour, and time matters. The other thing, I just want to give a very short reminder that Masters of Evaluation is a club that meets the first and third Fridays of the month at this time, 9 to 10:30. We evaluate to elevate. Some of the best feedback I got as I prepared my TEDx was from my Toastmasters. They changed my ending. I was getting ready to get on a plane and they said, don't you dare end that way. And I was like, oh, and I changed the ending because they were right and it helped. So we want to help evaluate. I will put a link to our next meeting, which is May 6th. We have speakers from around the world. We are a virtual club. We're an advanced club. You are always welcome to visit, and you are more than welcome to join. In the couple minutes we have left, Marjorie, do you have a closing thought for our audience?
Just do it. Don't let fear get a hold of you. Grab it. This is something that you can do. Just prepare it, do it, enjoy the ride. It is awesome. It is something, as a professional, is going to help you greatly. But personally, you have no idea how I feel, because it has helped me to become a better person. When I share my story about natural helpers, I have learned that a lot of people are doing the same. And we are a lot of people. Do it. Do whatever you want to do with this and enjoy it.
What I love about what you just said, Marjorie, look at the four of us on the screen. Could we be more different? And yet we all are in the same place. And that's why for all of you who are here, we are all so different, but we are the same. We have a passion for sharing what is important. Pat, your final words. And then I'll end with you, Janie.
I would recommend that, yes, you do it. If you've got something to say that you think that is important to you, that you don't believe that others understand, that should understand, get on the stage, put together a talk and say it, because you will get enormous value in working out your own thoughts, and you will get enormous satisfaction from doing it. Definitely do it.
Thank you, Pat. And Janie, again, thank you for managing us well and to give us your insight. What are your final thoughts?
My final thoughts actually echo Marjorie in a way, but as an organizer, curator, or whatever I am, is that for me the talk is obviously the end, if you like, of one particular journey for a speaker, but what I look for is the type of person who is going to benefit from the experience, not so much of being on the red dot, but the journey up to it, that is going to make what they in turn offer other people in their life's work richer, deeper, and better.
Thank you very much, Janie. Look at that, 9:59. Nothing makes my heart happier as someone who likes to talk than ending on time. And we have done it today for you. I hope to see you at MoE, Masters of Evaluation. We will do other master classes. This really hit a nerve with 129 people registering. We may do a second one. We did put a poll out there and said, anybody ever done a TEDx talk? There were 4 people, 3 or 4 people. I think it's the 4 of us. We didn't see anyone else, but if you've done a TEDx and you'd like to be part of a panel, you don't have to be a member of MoE. But Donna Caseborn, our VP of Education, said, you know, we've got 3 TEDx speakers in MoE. Why don't we do a panel? And that's why we're here. Use your clubs as well to bring interesting and important things to your members and invite us all to come. And with that, we'll stay on the line for about 2 minutes, but this meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Anyone has any other questions? Delighted to take them, I'm sure, for 2 minutes.
2 minutes, that's it. I'm closing the line then, Pat. Gonna get tough here. But we will have everybody's email too. So if you don't get a chance to ask a question, please email the person you'd like to ask. And if it's multiple of us, well, multiply it.
And Vicky, I will fly anywhere to coach people.
I want to make a comment. In the TEDx that I was part of, we were 18 people, and mine lasted 13 minutes. They gave me 30 minutes, and I used 13 and some.
Yeah.
And it was amazing. It really was. And I think there were 500 people in the audience. I couldn't believe it, that I was standing on that dot, looking around. Yes.
I tend to have 8 to 10 speakers.
Yeah, we
2
had
hours max.
It does get long. I think we had 12 or 15. They do a nice lunch break. They usually have a lunch you can buy or something, but it's a long day for people. And I was the first speaker after lunch, which can be a very killer place, but it was fine. People were still involved and in it. But it's just really about you showing up, and it's powerful. So, but it was awful to watch that poor guy freeze. Young, sweet guy, powerful story, but just he was so theatrical. And I guess I don't do theater, but I guess if you do theater and you forget where you are in the theater, it's bad. And he just froze and broke my heart because he was a sweet young guy. He loved my TEDx. I said, I'm pulling for you. And oh, you just die 1,000 times for people that do that. But he learned a lot, and he's still powerful. So it's not a win or lose. It's what would he have done differently? Okay, it's 10:02, everyone. So good to see you all. I'll get this recorded, downloaded, and send you a link. So thank you all, and hope to see you at Masters of Evaluation. Thank you, panel.
Thank you, Vicky. Great job.
Thanks, Muriel. Bye, everyone.